Hi everybody, Mark Cleghorn here. Welcome to the Photographer Academy, and today we're talking probably one of my favorite things on the planet, which is the three-sided studio. We've kind of had to just rig up a little bit of a smaller studio in here than our kind of film studio that we have. But today we're talking about how do you cope with a studio restrictions if you're just operating from the likes of one room. Now, some of you will know in our Studio 2, we've set that up as a dedicated studio, like a converted garage styling. So in other words, you're operating all your business from it. And if you watched our Changing Room series over the years, you'll see that we kind of morph it into different things. At present, it's a boudoir studio again and things, and working from home. And I'm sure at some stage in these live sessions, we'll be cutting up to Studio 2, but not today. So what I've done is basically mimic a largish size living room or a kind of a 3/4 garage as a conversion and so on. Now, what we're looking at here is around about a 15 feet wide. So that's from this wall to this wall here. And as far as the length is concerned, it's running about 16 feet, but I'm gathering, let's say there's another 5 to 6 or even 10 feet beyond. That's where the boys are. But that basically is allowing us to kind of have the kind of the desk, the administration element, the studio cupboards, etc., if that's what you're doing because you're working from home. And the good news, I suppose, for me is that when we opened our very, very first studio in the late 80s, we had a very, very small shop with studio facilities out the back. Clients had to walk through our workroom to actually get into our studio element and things really. And I come from a humble beginnings, in other words. The very, very first permanent studio I had, in fact, was while I worked for another photographer, Business Photographic Services, straight out of school. And because my wages were so bad that John gave me the back room, we were a commercial photography with our own lab and everything else, specialized in photographing for estate agents when I joined. He gave me the back room, and that turned into a little bit of a studio premises, and it's from within there I started to actually build up the business of portraiture, and obviously on weekends I was building up my wedding business as well. So, but what I'm trying to get to is I come from humble beginnings, and what we're into today is basically a dream space. You know, we all kind of aspire to it. But the first things I'll say is that when you work in a big space, the key thing is, like in a home, is where you zone things. So you've got to think about how it all kind of gets laid out, how it's mapped out, where you're going to be photographing and so on. So just think of it ergonomically from one thing to another. So within here today, I've set up what I feel is kind of a perfect starting point for most portrait photographers. What I mean by that, you might be a child photographer by week, as well as some headshots. You might be a family photographer on the weekends, whatever you kind of do, but a whole kind of mixture and so on. The one thing I absolutely love, and many of you will know, is kind of invented the white wall, or the three-sided white box, as it were. And as a rule, this wall and this wall behind here, as well as my main photographing wall, would all be white. I don't have skirting board on the main photographic wall because I don't like that visible in the shoot itself, okay? I don't mind it in secondary kind of walls, but I'm not really looking to create that room setty looking like it's in the client's own living room, especially if I've paid for all this kind of rent and rates to actually have a great studio and so on. So I'm looking for it to be a studio element. So the main white wall for me is the first thing. And even if I was limited to getting my back against here to photograph a group across here, to do with a likes of a 24 to 105 lens, I'd be able to shoot a pretty much the full 15, 16 feet wide, just with the one big softbox, a little bit bigger than this one. That would pretty much do its job, and I can work in that way without any trouble at all. As far as the secondary wall, so looking down the studio, where possible, this might be the main wall that I photograph with. Why? Probably because I like to use a very long lens or a prime lens. And if I'm using a prime lens, I like the 85mm and so on. So I need to be as far back as I can. The subject, as a rule, if possible, will be around about 5 feet, no more than 6 feet away from the background. In a 15-foot length or 16-foot length here, probably the client is going to be around about a meter, 3 feet-ish away from the background itself, just to give ourselves a good depth of field. So when we're photographing down the long length of the room, knowing that this wall here is a big white wall, then I would have the drop down of colored papers. I would have a wire running across it so I could have curtain backdrops to kind of drag in and out. And I'd usually use this corner as my dumping corner for all the kind of the long hanging material, the soft cloth backgrounds and things really. I do like soft cloth backgrounds because I can use them to cover over props. I can use them to obviously kind of merge in with the background that I've got and so on, as well as kind of allows me to give a little bit of texture if I kind of clip behind the cloth background to give us a three-dimensional effect and so on. So across this wall is going to be a main wall. But if this was a place where I was selling from as well, I would have to have images. Let me just widen that up a minute. Okay. I'd have to have some form of imagery. I'm not sure which camera is the best one to be seeing, but from there you can start to see the client will get a good idea of big images. Now, if you could see this direction, you'd see two ugly blokes and things, yeah, trying to be videographers and directors. But basically, we'd also have photographs that end, because when the client is stood here and they're looking at me, I want them seeing wall photography, wall art behind where I am. Even though I want them to concentrate on me, of course, I want to kind of subliminally put into their head, you are buying lots of wall stuff, okay? That's what I've got to get in my head. Sorry about the kind of the high pitch there. So up and down here as far as the colors are concerned, these paper backdrops are much higher than you're ever going to have because obviously, if you're not aware, we work from a converted church that I created around about 6 years ago now. And because we've got such amazing height in here, when I bought the church and we put the mezzanine floor in throughout, I wanted to make sure that basically I wasn't going to restrict myself, especially for all the dance photography that I do. I wanted to make sure I've got the height of flight and things really. So here you're seeing backdrops up much, much higher than they should be as a rule, but it just allows me to actually keep everything in sync. On this wall, I'm not sure if it is in view, but up on the top, you've also got a very, very big black background. It's not necessary at all, because really what this wall is about is white, and it's got to be kept clear, because I want to use it to actually pose clients onto and so on. So we talked about the paper, and we talked about the cloth backgrounds. We talked about unveiling images. Let me just put this back down again. So we talk about the colour the backdrop, and then we've got something else. Now, on this wall, it would tend to be something a little bit more creative, something different, or if I had a mimic white wall on that side, and I had one on here, as it were, in the same way, I would try and avoid from painting this anything at all, if possible, and I would much prefer, if all I had was other curtain backdrops and so on, these cloth backdrops. I should go get one of those in a minute, just so you know what I'm on about. But once more, those would actually be on kind of a wire. We cheat nowadays, all right? Anything with a photography on it, you add kind of a 0 or 2 zeros on the end. But if you just go down to IKEA, a kind of a zip wire for hanging drapes on it, that's about £5, and that does the job great. That's with all the little hooks and things as well. So along here, want something different. I would just be aware if you're going to put anything specific pattern-wise on any wall to photograph against, make sure it doesn't stop the photography from selling. This is one. I had a budget a few years ago, and basically I had to kind of redesign a studio for a very limited amount of money. I think it was about £25. So I went down to B&Q, that's a local kind of harder-to-wear superstore, as it were, and I looked in the end of rolls, as it were, and there was 2 rolls of this, and I thought, you know what, for £3, I'll have that, because it's got a great metallic. So this is good for our boudoir. It's not very good for anything else for child photography, but I can use it as well with some of our teen photography, especially if it's out of focus. It also looks great if I add some gel to it, because this kind of light gray is a shiny material behind here, so I get a 3-dimension. As well as today, what I've done is actually used one of our backgrounds, our pop-up ones, along here as the false wall. And this is a great kind of old master style. We've tucked some of it, as you saw already, just behind the paper, just to give it a little bit of stability. But as a rule, if this was a part of my scene, my set, then obviously it would have some kind of attachment to the wall so it didn't fall over on a client. Never a good idea for things to fall over on a client. As far as the flooring's concerned, beneath here, you might just be able to see there, there's like a wooden floor. Can we see that okay, Brandon? We can't. Okay, don't worry about it. Perhaps we'll have a little look in a minute when he walks over from his desk to over that camera, and he'll pan down and we'll see the wood floor in a minute. All right? So as far as the kind of the flooring's concerned, what we're looking at is basically a white vinyl floor that is just on like a scaffolding pole that I can roll across. And I've also got some really cheap cut-off vinyl flooring I bought from the carpet shop just down the road, in fact. So pretty much disposable, and basically we can kind of lose it as well. So this is the white vinyl on a scaffolding pole that's just picking out the end there, as you can see, all right? And what I do with this, if I'm looking to take the high key set fully away, and instead I'm going to get a little bit more of a set. We'll try and do it live now. I'll just kind of kick the scaffolding pole with the other background up to that end, and then all of a sudden I've revealed my wooden floor. So it's all about the maximization and versatility of a small space. So white wall, white vinyl floor. Below the floor, we've got a wooden floor. The main photographing end, we've got 3 colored backdrops, and then obviously the photographs behind to reveal as soon as we finish the shoot. So the client gets an idea of wall images, and those would also be at the far end, wherever the desk would be, and so on. Here we've got the old master, big kind of event background, and then we've got a little bit of a wall with some wallpaper on here. By the way, these are false walls on wheels, that they're also kit cupboards. We'll talk about those perhaps on another film. But yeah, it just allows us to move spaces around and create kind of a 3-dimension as well. And here, as I said, finish off the background, we've actually got the checkered floor. Lighting. Small space, minimize your kit. I know it'll frustrate you because you'll come along demonstrations, you'll see some of the stuff that you see on the Photographer Academy, blah, 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 and you're going to go, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that. But I'll implore you to kind of really think about what you need before you're buying, and not just replace it. I'd much prefer to replace a lens than a body. Why? Because the lens is forever, whereas the kind of the camera body is disposable. It's going to be used up, thrown away, or exchanged, and so on. That's very, very similar when we start to look at the lighting. If you consider all the accessories on the front of the light, most of the time it's going to be the most expensive thing that you buy, especially when you're buying once and forever. The studio flash itself in this case is in fact the most important part. Why? Because it's pretty much high end. It's the Elinchrom 500 ELCs. We've got 1,000 over there kind of as well. But these are designed to recharge fast, really get our images quick, so I can photograph. It doesn't mean I'm on motor drive, but it just means I'm not having to wait for the flash itself to charge itself up to be able to actually get the photograph done and things really. So for me, the ELCs is the best thing. As far as, in fact, what we're using today, the front end of this is the slightly cheaper end. So we're kind of reversing what I was saying about the camera and the lens a minute ago. The expensive part we've got here is the light, but in fact the front end, the accessories, is kind of the entry level. We've purposely done this for you instead of just bringing out all the expensive kits. So you can kind of see during the course of the live events that we're doing and the films on the Academy, when you can see this kit, the kit being used live, that you kind of realize what you can do with the kit before you invest then into your Ferrari as far as your light modifiers and everything else is concerned. Okay, in studio, we'll talk about the soft boxes in a minute, yeah? In studio, my main light is always on wheels. because a light should never be static, in my opinion. This is the first studio in a very long time, in fact, that I'm not running the high glide rails to actually be able to move the light in exactly where I want, even though I've got all the height that I need here. I'd have to use suspension rods coming down. It makes rattles, and the video boys would be going out of their head with all the noise going on. So that's the reason why we don't have the high glide. I would recommend to you that you're going to invest into a twin kit, okay? So either exactly the same heads, or say 1/500 like I've got here, and then 1,000 head as well. So they're pretty much the same head, just a slightly different in power, and that's going to be enough. You could probably get away with 2 500 heads in the likes of this space without any trouble at all. Then I'd have a third light, A, as a backup and as a effects light. And that could be the likes of a little Elinchrom D-Light 1, cheap as chips, pretty much will run until you drop it. So light that we can pretty much even handhold this for as long as we want into a certain place to actually take a photograph without any trouble. Its recharge rate is slower because it's not really a pro head. It's designed as the entry-level kind of head for photographers, but it will still work hard until it stops. And Jay, I don't know how long we've had these now, but it seems forever now, ever since they were launched. We've had, except when I've dropped one, I have done it, all right? Thank goodness, in fact, it was at an exhibition, and good old Elinchrom, the Flash, said to boys, oh, don't worry, Mark, just take one of ours. I'm not sure if the boss knows. If the boss knows, don't tell him that at this point, all right? But they allowed us to swap out. But again, kit for me is designed to be used. And the whole point of it is to make sure that it's not hidden away in a cupboard. So accessories, reflector dishes, soft boxes, beauty dishes, whatever is your kind of main lighting quality, you need to make sure it's at hand so you can kind of change things as quick as you can without going fishing away for it. So these little lights are good to add on a little bit of colored gel, especially if you're a wide aperture kind of photographer like I like to be. Majority of the time I'm photographing on the likes of f4, except if it's a family, then I'll pretty much be photographing around about f8. If it's a full family shoot, I'll probably set up 100 ISO for f8 straight away. If it was only a part group shoot, i.e. brother and sister, I would use the ISO to get to my working depth of field, f8, for a group, compared to what I like to photograph on is f4, because I like that kind of drop focus effect, especially when I'm using a prime lens with it. Then you're going to kind of start to think, oh, by the way, up in the corner up here is the other head that I was on about, okay? It's got another, I'm not sure if that's visible. It's up there if you can see it. Yeah, it's exactly the same ELC head, except I think it's 1,000 head up there today. But it's the same branding of the soft boxes. We're using the Photics today. As I said, these entry-level budget style of soft boxes are absolutely ideal for you to move away from the likes of a kit box that comes with your lighting when you buy it. They're actually based on a kind of an umbrella design, so they're very, very fast to put up if you're working on location or your room is a temporary studio as such, really, allowing you to collapse things pretty quickly and put them away. I like to use a round light source or a big octa. I like the catch light in the eye. That's it, all right? So when we start to kind of work or choose the soft boxes, it's easier for me than you because you're going to think, oh, I'll buy a rectangle box, I'll do this, I'll do that, and so on. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I like the catch light that these things give to us in the eye. That's the main thing, all right? As far as the kind of the trolley stand I was saying to you, this is a normal kind of photographic light stand, except we've bought the accessory wheels to go on the base. Big wheels makes it a little bit smoother to get around it, but it can be kicked very quickly across the place by mistake as well. So not ideal in a commercial studio, but these have locks on their feet as well. So if they're designed to stay in a place, then they'll do that anyway. Height of the light is the key thing. And when you choose your stand, you really want to make sure that your Light, stand itself, can at least touch the ceiling, all right, of whatever space. Here I can't, because probably it's about half the height I'm at now where it would actually go to. Why do we want it this high? Well, we want the direction of the light coming down, okay, just coming down actually in the eye. So when it's turned towards the subject position, if I want a little bit more of a fine art effect and also to illuminate some of the background, so if I'm working in one light, pretty much having the light this high would actually do its job. Really though, when we take the light up high, we also want to give a little bit of angle to that light to kind of focus it or point it down to just give that extra little direction to the light. The one bonus in doing this is when I go into my kind of core black and white style, one light photography and things really, white wall, blah, 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 but I'm usually going to use a reflector below, and that's the only thing at present you're missing in this space is a reflector, and I'd usually be using either a triflector if I had enough space in studio to use it, we'll bring it in a minute, or I'll be using a hand reflector for portability. This light, though, which camera's the best one? Brandon, that one for a minute? Is that okay? So this light here, if I point it towards me, this is what we refer to as directional light, okay? But in fact, what we want to do is feather the light. So instead of it pointing at me, it kind of points across. By doing that, you get a softer use of the light source, and it starts to use the edge of the light, the feather of the light, to give a much, much softer light anyway. I mentioned that if I was photographing across the big white wall here, I would just use the one light source to light the big group. And to do that, I'd need to make sure that the light was going to be in a position, okay, that is going to pretty much light the whole group. So it would feather across. With some of the bigger groups, you might be tempted to point the light towards them, but avoid from doing that. The reason being you'll give direction to the light, and that's a bad thing. So I'll just switch this one off so you're not getting confused for 1 minute. And that light up there would also be off as well, otherwise it will be two lights. I mentioned about using this wall as my main white wall, and I mean it. It's a posing wall. If you've ever seen us photographing on the Academy with a likes of a client or a model, and we're using the polystyrene flat, some say, look, lean against it, but don't lean against it. So in other words, just fake it, because otherwise you're going to fall over because it's not propped up and so on. So as far as this light is concerned, when I'm photographing a big group across here, we're getting this great kind of space. This light needs to go up as far as it can, and then I could physically photograph the whole kind of group from here right across to here. Yep. Where possible, if we didn't have a bigger softbox than this, you might want to actually think about a secondary light. So like this even the D-Light 1. Remember I said that this wall should be white as a rule? I'd probably just pop the D-Light 1 up quite high, bounce it off this wall coming back through. And obviously, as this is grey, I could use the likes of a polystyrene reflector dish to do exactly the same thing. So I disappeared off to get cloth backgrounds. The question before we went live, I disappeared, was what you go to, and I mentioned cloth. Cloth backgrounds for me, pretty much the best thing you'll ever buy, as long as you buy it well and you buy it once. If you find a cloth background that you really, really love, then buy two of it, okay? So they're the similar color, so we could actually have one hanging lengthways or widthways, and then we can have one across the floor itself, so we can kind of blend it all together. I think if I was traveling to clients' homes, I'd probably invest more into the pop-up backgrounds, or the likes of this event background. This is a big investment here, this event background, yeah? However, it's quick to put up. It comes into like a bit of a kind of a cricket bag size, you know, if you know what I'm on about. And it basically allows you to store everything in there. It's all folded into there. And then when you arrive at the event or the client's home, it's a good pop-up. It takes about probably a good 10 minutes to put up, probably allow 15 minutes. So from arriving at a venue or a client home probably with putting up the lights and so on, you're looking at about a 30-minute rig. Obviously, I would try and photograph in my studio space rather than a client's home, especially when we're going to take big backdrops along. I would much prefer to work on location out in the parks or whatever it would be if I was going to actually work with out on location. At the end of the day, that's why I got a studio space. So if you're in a permanent, so how many lights do we need as a basic as well? If I was getting going, a double-headed kit, as I was saying to you, don't worry about buying the best of the best of the best for now. Mature to that. You will buy, just like in cameras, that we kind of get a better model and so on. As far as if you're just getting going, then kind of just start off. I would still buy brand like Cleghorn. I know they're a little bit more expensive than a cheap Chinese kind of knockoff with it. The biggest problem you're going to have with that is as you grow your photography kit, you want all things to work together. And I've been there, honestly. At one stage, I think I had 3 lights of one manufacturer. I had a big orange, you know, tungsten-y kind of thing and blah, blah, blah. And then I soon realized that nothing integrated together, and that's what you've got to make sure of. So buy 2-headed kit, buy on a brand, make sure you can afford to mature to that higher level of the brand as well. If you've just beginning a studio and it's going to be a professional studio, in other words, you're going to earn money from it, then if possible, invest into the pro ranges straight out of the gun, because then you'll basically be able to actually really stretch that investment out across the course of years. Have a chat with the likes of the Flash Centre if you're based in the UK. See if there's interest-free options running and the likes of, so you can kind of spread the cost, especially if you're opening a studio up, so it's not kind of killing the cash flow straight away. I almost went into a business mode then. Sorry, Jay. Anything else there?
Finally, your favourite background.
Oh. My favourite background, funny enough, is a white wall, because you can pretty much find a white wall anywhere, whether it's even out on location at a beach or whatever it be. And a white wall I can make go black, and I can make a white wall go any colour of pastel that I want. So I'm sorry to disappoint all the background manufacturers out there for a minute, but my favourite background of all is a white wall. Brilliant. So I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of an insider first step into the 3-sided studio. When we kind of do this again, we're going to be putting the likes of a subject in place, and we'll show you how to maximize the variety with using this kind of setup without any real work. Hope you've enjoyed this live session. Remember to give us your comments in the Facebook comments and kind of reviews. We'd love to see you on more of our live sessions. Thanks to the boys. See you next time. Bye-bye.